live and record. Okay. So I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want us to each answer the question and like take turns?
Yeah, let's do that. That'd be great.
Okay. I can start. The first one, it says, what doctrine in Wilbur's heart drove him to advocate? What is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent? So some of the points that I discussed in my paper was about, the first one was that Wilbur gained a testimony of God existence. I believe that, when he said like, oh, his friend said like, God find you, you find God. And then Wilbur said, oh no, he found me. So I feel that when, like he said that he gained a testimony, and since he knew, just like the prophecy, like I know I have this knowledge now, so that knowledge that make him do all the things that try to live the gospel, because he knew that he had a personal testimony of the existence
Right.
of a God. And also that he could also like he had a testimony, and also like through the things, God's creations, he could like, no, I that's when I have to say proof, but like or backup, but like admire all the things, and make him feel like, yeah, there is a God. We have the nature, and the animals, and all the marvelous things in the world, that there is no doubt that there is not a God. So I feel that he had such a strong testimony, and like I think he had some of the gospel truth, like he advocate or believe that all men are equals in God's eye, so therefore that all men should be treated fairly. That's why he worked so hard for the slavery to be abolished, so that black people could be freed from all the injustice that they were suffering. So he felt so much love for them, like he couldn't, like his mind couldn't bear the thought that he was like not doing anything, or not doing enough, knowing like all the suffering that they were going through. So he was so passionate about like working, because of the love that he had for them. He wants to serve God children's. He was making so passionate just to like have a testimony of Heavenly Father. And lastly, I think it says, once we understand the key role that families plays in the plan of happiness, we would feel the need to advocate, to defend and protect family. So all God children can have the opportunity to have an eternal family and be able to come back to Heavenly Father's presence.
Right.
That's what is important to me, like, the doctrine of the family.
Yeah, that's like everything you said is pretty similar, like along the same lines of what I said. So, what I thought that drove Wilbur to his advocacy is that he felt as if God were calling him to be an advocate. And when he was in the dilemma trying to decide if he should take up religion or politics, he wanted to do the right thing. And when he heard the stories about the slaves, he wanted to fight for them and for their rights. And he believed that we are all equal. So that's like kind of around the same lines that you're talking about. And then for the second question, for me, the doctrine of the family, why I believe it's so important is because it's the foundation of the gospel. And it is the center of God's plan of happiness. Like you mentioned, his plan of happiness. And we need it in order to be happy. And let's see. Also, I don't know if you remember, we read a talk by Ezra Taft Benson. It might have been like a devotional or something. I don't remember. But in the talk, he stated, great battles can be great heroes, but heroes will make great battles. You will never have a better opportunity to be a greater hero in a more crucial battle than in the battle you will face today and in the the immediate future. Be warned that some of your greatest battles you will face will be fought within the silent chambers of your own soul. And then I thought that this relates because it reminds us that having this advocacy in our heart trains us to prepare our children to fight and prepare them for what is to come. And then also, for us to be both passionate and persistent allows us to have opportunities to help us build strong families. And whether it involves getting involved at home, church, or in the world, we have the opportunity to be an advocate for families. So that's what I put for number one. That was kind of a lot, but those are my opinions on it. So I felt like we had kind of similar views, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, like we're supposed to expand. So it's good that we have long answers. That means that we, like understand the material.
Right.
So that's good.
So I'll read number two. So number two, how did Wilbur employ the theoretical Bronfenbrenner approach to becoming a more effective advocate? Identify at least one thing in each system and be specific. So I feel like this question, there's like, you could have had a lot of different answers, but some of the ones that I came up with. So for the microsystem, I thought about when he met his wife and her influence that started him to advocate again. This was an internal factor that took place, so like the microsystem. Then the mesosystem was when William Pitt and the others convinced Wilbur he could do God's work by taking a stance against slavery. And this was a peer influence that took place. And then for the exosystem, I was thinking about when Wilbur wanted everyone to realize the horrible conditions that the people from Africa experienced and lived through when they took them on the ship and physically showed them how badly it really was. And then the microsystem, I thought, took place when Wilbur consistently tried to pass those laws of slave trade and didn't stop trying, no matter how many times he failed, until he succeeded. And then lastly, for the chronosystem, I thought it was the time it took Wilbur to join the fight and the time it took him to get it abolished. So from start to finish. And it was between those times while he was fighting that the chronosystem took place. So I don't know if I answered the question correctly, but that was like my point of view.
No, I think I was, like listening, and I was reading my bullet points, and yeah, we have similar answers. So for me, so for the microsystem, I think that Wilbur understood the importance of this system for the human development. So
Right.
he knew that all humans need and should have the right to develop and a strong family, develop a strong family relationship, and socialize with other peers, have access to education, health services, and especially healthy work environment to grow up to become functional citizens. So having this understanding, he knew that being a slave was preventing this from happening, to develop all these things and have all these things like help them to become, just to have a normal human development.
Right.
So that's what I think about the microsystem, how he understood, and why it was so important for him to work on this cause.
I like that.
For the mesosystem, also he knew that there was a need to interact, with each other, with people, between the systems, to have again, a proper development of the individual. And so they didn't have, it didn't seem that they were able to, like, being in that work environment, any opportunity to socialize and have this opportunities to go to school or learn, or they were just like working and dying, or working or dying. Like there was no life for them.
Mhm.
There wasn't that interaction between system for the mesosystem and the exosystem. So the individuals were affected by slavery practices, as families were often separated by parents or children taken away from each other, or by death due to the inhuman working conditions that the slaves were subjected to. So that's I think, like he knew, like, well, kids are dying, out of the 600 slaves that are coming, are being taken here. Only survived 200. So there's a lot of destruction in families that is
Yeah.
happening. So how can they have this connection when with the family when there is not family to be with?
Mhm.
So and the microsystem, I feel that slave culture needed to be eliminated. I know that Wilbur was working so hard, and for that to happen, he knew that this culture needed to be eliminated to allow the growth of the black community by changing the social and economical status. So he knew that once the slave trade will be abolished, that then these people could have an opportunity to really be part of the system here, or I mean in England, not here, but or like they also like since they were taken from Africa or their villages or whatever they were taken, also they didn't allow for their culture to grow. They were taking so many, and I imagine that the culture in that like generations probably got lost, because there was nobody to live in those villages
Mhm.
anymore, because they were taking women's and kids, and then they didn't just took men, but they took everybody.
Right.
So I bet like whole villages were
Yeah.
taken away. I mean, even the Equiano said that he was like a prince, so they didn't care about like the
Yeah.
social status. They just take everybody. So that's how it was the microsystem was affected. And lastly, the chronosystem. I feel that the Black community of the slaves were affected due to the slavery practices on their time, and these practices prevent them from having a proper human development. So, like this Crown system was talking about different events that happens on their time. So for them, it was they live in a time of slavery,
Mhm.
so therefore their lives were affected due to these practices. So like right now we're living a different things that affect us as a family, but in that time was affect
Yeah.
the slave trade was affecting them. So
Thanks for that. Yeah.
sorry, it was so long.
No, that was perfect.
I can read the started 31 now.
Okay, perfect.
So how did Wilbur and his fellow advocates do and share their research? What evidence did they provide to persuade those opposing or on the fence? So I remember the first, in the beginning of the movie that when Wilbur was thinking, like you also mentioned, that he was like, oh, do I serve God or did I work in the
Yeah.
government? He was debating. But then once, they came over, they showed him, the tool that they used to transport the slaves, and even like the Ikiano. I don't know how you pronounce it, the name Ikiano. The prince that
Oh
he
yeah.
opened his shirt and showed him
Uh-huh.
how he was
Yeah.
branded. So all those things that before he just knew about it or heard about it, but once he saw with his eyes,
Mhm.
he was on the fence, Wilbur. But then, like after hearing and like personal witnesses and seeing all these things, that then he like, okay, I have to do it. So I think that they um, they persuade him by providing a personal story,
Yeah.
and just proof. Um, so once he knew that, like I feel that he is like, we were like, well, I was pursued by them, so I should, use the same things, the same way, to bring to the parliament and show them the same things that they show me. So if I was moved, probably hopefully they gonna be moved too. And I
Mhm.
remember, how he was like, um, he built this box where,
Yeah.
to replicate the space that they were allowed to be. And
Uh-huh.
I feel that box was like pretty compared
Yeah.
prior to the one that they will use. But he had a point. He wanted to show them, um, the situations that they were, put in, the slaves. And also,
Mhm.
I remember, that in the movie they say that, he, talked to the clergymen that in the ships, the doctors that treated the slaves. He wanted to gather all this evidence and, the signatures.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of work. He didn't just appeal to their sensitivity, but he
Mhm.
had evidence. And I feel like, that, he wanted to use both like elements, like the personal, story, the evidence, to have his strong argument that he needed, that, is going to help, those in the fence
Yeah.
to jump to his side. So, also, that he talked about, the all the like, Equanum wrote a book, so he recorded all the things that happened to him. So he also, like, have him as a living proof of, what was happening, or what he,
Mhm.
had to go through. So all those things, I think, help for those who, like, persuade those in the fence, or to just bring awareness to people that didn't even know what was happening.
Yeah. I seriously, I everything you mentioned, I have jotted down. So, like, um, in order to connect with the people and share their research, I mentioned the same as you, Wilbur and his advocates took people on the ships for physical evidence for them to see and experience firsthand what the slaves went through. And also, like you mentioned, the stories and personal accounts. They talked to the slaves and got those accounts that painted a picture for the people to understand the horrible events that had taken place. And then I was thinking about it, and I thought that the biggest way they advocated was by their persistence and how they were just going, 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 and never stopped. And they showed that there was nothing that was going to stop them in what they were doing. And also, the last thing I mentioned for um, to help persuade was you mentioned the slave box that he did, the dimensions of the slave box, and this was used as a visual to help share their research and assist others in understanding the severity of the situation. So I mentioned, just like you mentioned, all mine were pretty similar to yours. So number 4, how does the
Be-
film?
Before you start, I
Oh,
totally
sure.
forgot that we needed to say our names at the beginning of the meeting so the teacher can know.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh no, we forgot that.
Oh, that's
So
okay.
hopefully, she, is still watching the whole thing. So, well, my name is Julia Torres.
My name is Morgan Rasmussen. That's totally okay.
I hope that, she doesn't deduct points for that.
Oh, we'll be fine. No, she won't.
Just take
Okay.
care. We just say our names. Sorry about that.
You're totally fine. I forgot too. Okay, so for number 4, how does the film portray the importance of working together as a group? What has the family advocacy group work taught you? Why do you think it is a good idea to discuss your thoughts with your peers each week in the meetings? So, I thought that all the men that were advocating, they came from different backgrounds and professions, so they all brought something different to the table. And they all had different allies and were associated with different people that all shared unique things. And then throughout the semester, we all read the same materials and the same things, but we always had such a diverse and differing words and opinions to share. Which, if like even now, we watched the same movie and we have similar things we've said, but we have different opinions, and it's really cool to see that. And then um, something that I was thinking about is that it's so important to be aware that although we believe the same things, like we belong to the same church, we might have different opinions on the topics and beliefs we share, and we all had different experiences, and by sharing our experiences with others, we are able to expand our horizon. And then by discussing our thoughts on the materials that we've read, we are able to not only hear each other's opinions and gain a better understanding of the topics being discussed, but I thought that by doing that, it helps us improve ourselves as individuals as well. So those are my opinions on that.
Yeah, the same, like in the beginning that you mentioned, I feel the same way that the film showed that, if we want to work in a cause, we should join forces with those who share our beliefs. So to
Mm-hmm.
multiply our efforts and make it easier or less hard to work
Yeah.
on a common cause. Also, working as a group provides the support
Mm-hmm.
needed to rely on when faced with tribulation or opposition, when defending or advocating for a cause, because it's going to be times that, if you're alone and something happens, you won't have anybody to rely on or that support system. So that's why it was important. It's important to join forces with other people. Um, and what I have learned from my HO group, and I felt so proud that I didn't miss any HO group.
Very impressive.
That was one time that it was only me, another girl. Like, oh,
Oh my
wow!
gosh.
I was so like prior, like, oh yes, I didn't miss
Very
any.
dedicated.
And I feel that also, like, since I always put the link, I feel like I had this responsibility, like, oh, I'm the one that, like, need I have to put the link, so I have to be there. And
Yeah.
at some point, I think I told them, like, hey, you guys need to learn how to set up the link, because, what if I can make it, if I
I
get sick or
know.
something? But I end up just doing it every time. And I feel that, I really learn a lot from them.
Yeah.
Um, that, like you said, we have different opinions.
Uh-huh.
And so to learn from that, to learn, different ideas from them, uh, to probably understood better the materials that we learn, and maybe we miss something, and then when they bring it up, like, oh, that's right, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think about that. So the HOA meetings help me to have a better understanding of some concepts
Right.
that other members of the group may have, understood better. And also, I learned a lot from them, the different organizations that I can get involved to advocate for children and family, that maybe, I wasn't aware of. And also I learned how to deal or overcome the obstacle that I may find my journey as an advocate for children and family. So just thinking how they would handle some situations that, gives me like an idea, or like, oh, that's what I can do, or just listening to their different ideas and point of views
Mhm.
to like enrich our knowledge. So yeah, that's for that. So let's go to number 5.
Okay.
What parallels do you see between Wilbur and Capitan Moroni in Alma 46? What is a Christian and professional family advocate, and how did Wilbur exemplify that? How can you be effective and Christian-like against such loud and often degrading voices? First, I feel that both had a strong testimony and faith in God, and that they both developed Christ-like attributes like obedience, integrity, honesty, service, and sincere love and compassion for God's children.
Yeah.
Both of them were selfless, selfless about the cause that they were fighting for. They didn't have any hidden agenda, or they working for their benefits. Nothing that they were doing will benefit them in a personal level at all. Everything was just for focus on the well-being of the people that they were serving or fighting for. Um, they care and fight, like I said, for the well-being of freedom of others. Uh, and the last one is the Christian. A Christian and professional family advocate is a person that strives to follow the Savior's example by living the gospel's principles and combine this knowledge with well-researched data to present reliable information when advocating for children and families. So I think that, like sometimes, like I remember one of the videos that we watched where they were two different advocates against
Mhm.
same-sex marriage, and one was just like so focused on the scriptures and just talking about or choosing all the scripture that talk about how God doesn't allow that in like in a it makes sense, it makes seem that God as a like just a angry God, that just focus on the scriptures, and the other one, like was more rational, and he didn't need to use the Bible to back up his argument. And I feel that that's important, that we don't just like focus on one thing. It has to be a combination of both, like our Christian belief, and also bring uh, credible, reliable data to back up our argument. So that's why I think that a Christian and professional family advocate has to have those things
Mhm.
to make it successful.
Yeah.
So lastly, I feel that Wilbur used his faith and Christian belief, oh well, what I just said, to
Mhm.
his knowledge of the law to create a bill to advocate for the abolition of slavery. He also presented proof of the cruel working conditions that the slaves were subject to before the House of Commons. So even though he was so passionate about his cause, he didn't just like work, like sometimes we just want to like go and rally, and march, and that's all we do, or we just post it on Facebook. Oh, I
Yeah.
support this. But what do we do with that? Like really, like
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't make any difference in the world. But him like having this passion and also like working in the government, so he made it. He used this knowledge of the law that he had to make the bill to abolish the slave trade. So he used this passion and his knowledge and make it happen, make something happen.
Yeah.
So that's what it needs to happen to like put your actions into like your efforts into actions that are gonna actually make a difference, not just
Yeah.
like
I
be the
like
passion and nothing happen.
I really like that. I think that's something so I mentioned that I know I've mentioned that a lot of my comments this semester. Um yeah, cuz you can say something and you can believe something, but there's going to be no change if you don't do anything about it or take action on your words. And I think that's something really important to remember. So, the parallels that I found that are both in Wilbur and Captain Moroni was that they both stood up and fought for justice. Just as Wilbur stood up and fought for the equality of man and to abolish slavery, Captain Moroni stood before the people to defend their religion, and he raised the title of liberty. So for both of them, it took a lot of courage for them to do what they did, and they both rallied people to preserve their religion and beliefs. And then for the second part of the question, I thought that we can use our Christianity and advocate for our families by raising our children in the gospel. And a huge part is by being examples ourselves, because people are always watching. And not in every case, but I was thinking that by the way you teach your children or by the things that they reflect, it's not all the time because, everyone makes mistakes and stuff, but um, people are going to notice the behaviors that you have and your family has, and they're going to know. You hear it a lot that we LDS people are peculiar people, and how we are peculiar from the rest. And they're going to be curious and want to know more. And I think this is a great way that we can advocate for our families and be effective against the ways of the world. So that was my opinion. Are you ready to move on to number 6? Okay, so Marcia Barlow spoke on persuasive speaking and writing. Did Wilbur and others exemplify any of Marcia's ideas? How so? Okay, so I thought that there was so much persuasive imagery and emotion that throughout this entire film that drew people in and exemplified Marcia Barlow's ideas of the persuasive speaking. I thought that was like a huge part of it. And then also, we mentioned it before, the storytelling, you know, the like personal accounts and stuff, but the storytelling part of the slaves made all the difference in exemplifying Marcia's ideas. And I think that this is what, like a big part of what the emotion in the film reflected off of. And then also by getting people to feel things was their biggest ally, and it worked in their favor and highlighted Marcia's points on persuasive thinking. So yeah, those were the things that I thought really exemplified her ideas that we had studied and read previous in the semester.
Yeah, I like how she's the one that brings the combination. She talks about persuasion and well-researched data make a strong argument. And yeah, like you said, throughout the movie, we could see the emotional part to make us believe on the cause, and also the evidence, all the things that were done. Just the fact that like it was focused on the bill that Wilbur made. So it's just like a combination of both.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that Wilbur and his associates exemplify Marshall's ideas, and as he persuaded others to join the movement, by advocating for the abolition of slavery. He used the narrative um, to tell them about the inhumane conditions that the slaves were subject to in the plantations in Jamaica. And also, Ikuano with his book, like where he was able to reach a lot of people. They say, like he brought like 200 copies and they were like sold in an hour. So people were really like um, wanted to know what was happening. And so I think, like by learning, reading about it, like that's how sometimes we get like knowledge and we learn things. So I think that having a book help, these advocating efforts. Um, and like I mentioned before, like Wilbur was a good Christian, but he just didn't like feel like, okay, so I believe in God, and like I love my neighbor, I feed him, I spare some money to the people, to the poor. But he didn't stop there. He knew that he needed to do more. So by actually like working and initiating this bill was a big step, or to prove that his beliefs put him into action. That like we said, faith is is um, is proven with actions. So he did that. He he had a testimony of the gospel, and now he wanted to live it by doing something with his time and his resources and knowledge. So um, yeah, like, I believe that they did all of he and his associate followed Marcia Barlow ideas. Okay, let's start with number 7. What role did the government policy and religious freedom play in the fight of the slave trade? Did you see the political system being pro-family? Why or why not? Answer all the questions. So I feel that the government role was crucial, as the parliament members
Yeah.
had the last word in voting to abolish the slave trade. Um, so creating the bill, the policy, was a key factor to make the dream of abolishing the slave trade become a reality. So that's how they were
Yeah.
they play a role, and being able to exercise their religious freedom helped Wilbur and his associates to stand up for their Christian beliefs that all men are created equal and deserve to be given the same liberties and rights. I believe that's how the three different government policy and religious
Yeah.
freedom play a fight in the slave trade. And lastly, I feel that England cared for their citizens, that they probably were pro-family
Uh-huh.
in regards to the citizens, but unfortunately not for the slaves, as the government doesn't seem to care about disintegrating and separating families,
Yeah.
by taking them away from their villages, or when they die on the fields. So they didn't seem that they were pro-family. They didn't care about
Mhm.
their families. It doesn't talk much about the citizens of England. Like showing in the movie that they were pro family,
Yeah.
but uh, they didn't seem for other people. It may have seen.
Yeah. No, I thought the same. For the pro family part, I didn't see much pro family. You're right. You mentioned like the England families, like they cared, but definitely not on the slaves part. And then everything that I saw was like mostly based on economics and finances or money. And then um, let's see. Is it okay if I keep going, or did you want to say anything else? Okay, so then for also, I thought that the government, like back to the first part of the question, the government sometimes tries to choose what's right and what benefits the people financially, like what's financially the best. And so when it came down to shutting down the slave trade, they were worried about the people involved in the slave industry and what effects it would have on the economy. And to go along with that, the government saw the loss of slavery as a loss of plantations and a loss of their economy. And they were so concerned about this that they didn't bother to listen to Wilbur and the people. And then I also thought that religion played a significant part in the fight of slave trade because it was the basis of the issue. And people believed we are all equal, and because of their religious backgrounds, they felt this way. So that's what I thought about these questions. Yeah, but the pro family, I was like, I don't know. Yeah. So, should I move on to number 8? Okay, so number 8, do you feel that Wilbur used his time on earth well? How do you see him showing the elements of consecration that Elder Christofferson spoke of? So, I think that Wilbur used his time on earth exceptionally well, and he was not only passionate about what he believed in, but extremely proactive and vocal about it. That like I think that refers back to like what we were talking about earlier. You believe something, but if you don't take action on it, then nothing's gonna change. And also, he wasn't afraid to stand up for something so controversial. And I think that can be so hard these days because there are so many topics and issues going on that people butt heads about and get in really big fights over. But if we want things to change, I mean, as long as we're like going about it respectfully, then I think that it's important to stand up for what you believe in. And then also, I thought Wilbur centered his time and advocacy around God's purpose, which he believed. And I think that this directly correlates with Elder Christopherson's talk of consecration. And um, Elder Christopherson pointed out that this is a quote. He said, "True success in this life comes in consecrating our lives. That is, our time and choices to God's purposes." Close quotations. And I thought that this is exactly what Wilbur did throughout his life. He devoted his time and choices to God's purpose. And what Wilbur was doing really was called of God, I thought. And when he was in that service, he was being protected by God. And then also, even, Wilbur was really sick while he was on earth, and he may not have felt like he fulfilled what he needed to, but, like we believe there's a life after death. He's still continuing his work up in heaven. And when Wilbur was sick and his cousins told him, if you remember his cousin, they were sick, he was saying, "You need to get well and take care of yourself and not worry about this." But Wilbur, he never made excuses or said, "Hey, I can't do this." It was very important for him and something that he felt like he needed to do. So those are my thoughts on number 8.
Yeah, like I have the same thoughts. I agree that Wilbury uses time well and make the right choices, just like Elder Christopher Tax. Those are elements of a consecrated life, to use your time and make good choices in this earth, to prove that you're doing a good job with your following the purpose of coming, to this earth.
Yeah.
We are working our progress to gain, or to gain, to receive the blessings that Heavenly Father wants us to have. He loved God's children. He showed his love with actions. Like he will feed, people. He will care for the poor. He care for the animals.
Yeah.
I was like, all the animals that he had, how he mentioned in the movie, there was something wrong with that, especially
Yeah.
those that, there was something wrong, that they needed to, like, extra care. He will, like, take care of them, and,
Yeah.
use his resources that he had, to just, and it seems like, even though, like, he was just giving, throughout the movie, he seems that, like, he still have more. Like, I feel like he was blessed, because he was so selfless that, he was just giving without
Yeah.
caring. He didn't want to have more, but, so, God bless him with more resources, because he knew that, he used them just to help others, not just accumulate rich, like, richness for his
Mhm.
own. um I feel that, like, once he understood that he can make a change, once he worked so hard to abolish the slave trade and make a difference. How at the end of the movie they said that, he kept working in other causes,
Yeah.
movements. So he, like, okay, so I make something happen, like, so there is I can make a difference. And so he used the same passion for other movements, and, like, he saw results. He spent all his life just working for others.
Yeah.
And I feel that, I mean, he also was blessed. He had a family. He had, got married, with a great woman that, at the end, it seems like she was, the one that, like, when he was losing faith, she was there to support him, and, give him that confidence to go back. So, just because, like, he was always looking for others, I feel that Heavenly Father also, provide him the help that he needed to, like, keep working on
Yeah.
his. I think it was at the end God's, like, work also, always caring for all of his children, and using using us to help each other
Mhm.
for our own personal progress too. Because, like, we know he can do anything, he can stop
Yeah.
anything, but he wants us to develop those skills to, like, all the tribulation that we have is so we can
Mhm.
just grow, So once we understand that, then we're gonna appreciate more, all the trials and tribulation that we have, because we're gonna see it as an opportunity to grow. Then we're gonna like use our talents, our time, our to make good choices. So I feel that Wilbur
Yeah.
is a perfect example of a consecrated life. Okay, so we're ready to go to the next question. It says, any other profound thoughts or personal insights from the movie that are related to child and family advocacy? Um, I feel that Will wanted to put an end to the necessary and unfortunate death of many slaves, children, who died due to the brutal conditions under which they were forced to work. So,
Mhm.
he cared for children, and knowing that they were like the scene that they say, like some kids, fall asleep and they're so exhausted they roll into the fire, or they probably just were working so hard that they died just right there. So his thought of these children having to go through that, like he probably make him even more passionate, like I need to do this,
Mhm.
I need to like work harder to like end this. We have compassion sometimes for children more than adults.
Yeah.
So, and like this show, like also I feel that he was more passionate about that, after learning that there were children's also, slave children's, or that they were suffering. So like that's why he advocated more. um, I feel that another reason that made Wilbur advocate for the abolitions of the slave trade was when he learned, um, of the great numbers, that men, women, and children were dying while being transported from their, homeland in Africa to England. Like I mentioned earlier, that i- if they will take 600, only
Mhm.
200 survive. It's like more, like more, two-thirds die. It's like it was just like so inhumane. Like they didn't care. Like I feel that they took as many as they could, because they knew that like more than half I was gonna be dead. So having this, like, how, in his head, like children's and women's are dying. So he wanted to like stop that. And also the movie mentioned that the or when they were attacking Wilbur and his wife, she like, oh, I know you like kids.
Mhm.
So is, like it says, the question is the he if he if that is related, to child and family advocacy. I mean, he liked children. So like I
Yeah.
mentioned, I feel that, because he liked children, and knowing that they were suffering so much,
Mhm.
make him even like, um, give him a desire to work harder to abolish the slavery trade, so these kids don't have to suffer, the women, the even, the men especially.
Yeah.
So everybody don't have to suffer. But yeah, it's related to child and family advocacy, because if, these families were separating, they were disintegrating, they cannot complete the plan of salvation. So by advocating to end the slave trade, then it's being advocating for families and children.
Mhm. Um, let's see. So this movie, I thought, demonstrated all great things Wilbur and his advocates did, um, to support this, and it showed that without persuasion and evidence, these controversial issues can be struck down. And so I think that when we're advocating for children and family, we need to have a lot of persuasion and the way we talk, and we need to have evidence to back up what we're saying. And then also, I think I learned from what I learned from this is that if you believe in something, stick to it. And this is like the same thing we've talked about. But if you stand for what you believe in, don't waver based on others pressuring you or the people you're surrounded by. You know, stick to what you believe in and stand strong. And then also, this question has made me think about relating slavery to families, and that's something that I've really not thought about before. And um, those who were forced into slavery, they had rights and families too. And you know, we're all people, and we're all God's children. I think that's something we need to remember. You know, nothing makes us different, and I think by advocating the fact that we're all God's children, this is something that directly relates to children or child and family advocacy. So those were my thoughts on that. And then two more, yay! So, number 10, what was your understanding of the doctrine of the family at the beginning of the semester, and how has it changed? So, at the beginning of the semester, you know, I thought I knew the doctrine of the family enough. And after completing this course, I've realized that, you know, kind of how really, like, how much I was missing about the topic. And um, one of the things I learned was that how to teach my children and how to seek out resources to advocate for my children and other families. And, you know, I've always had a testimony of families and the importance of families. But what changed for me was realizing how people and the topics going against families and what we can do to stand up for that and make a difference. And also making a difference, I learned that it doesn't have to be something huge. Like it, just like, you know, the greatest acts of service, they don't have to be these massive, like extravagant things. It is the little things that make all the difference. Like things such as getting involved in your child's school or just little tiny things. I think that's a big thing that I've taken away from this, you know. So that's what I thought about this.
Yeah, I feel the same with you, you know, like having the gospel in our lives. I feel like, yeah, you know, we have the knowledge, so we're good. But, you know, having this class is like, wow, I am like far behind from, you know, like knowing, you know, like all the things that family, you know,
Yeah.
uh, it, family like is being put through. I, you know, feel like, you know, I'm doing my best with my own family, you know. I feel that sometimes because I'm so focused on my own family that I don't have time you know, do things outside my house. And I
Mhm.
felt always like, yeah, it's fine, you know, because I'm focused on my family. So that should be just, that should justify, you know, me not helping and working or getting involved with, you know, advocating family and children's. And
Mhm.
now you know, after learning about this class, it's like, wow, I need to make the time, you know, I need to get my family involved so we can
Yeah.
do it as a family. We can you know, obviously living the gospel and being an example, that's going to be a huge part, but I still think that I need to make the extra effort to get involved. And I a lot of, you know, times I felt really motivated, you know, when I learn when I listen to videos or, you know, learn different materials. I really felt
Mhm.
motivated to like, okay, I need to do this. I want to go and learn more about this. So it was, you know, like very a very good learning experience. Another thing that, you know, I thought that I wasn't aware of the gravity of the attacks that the family unit has been suffering the last decades.
Yeah.
I was like, had no clue. I was like, yeah, everything is fine. And, you know, learning about how, you know, bad it is, it's like, wow, yeah, there is so much work to do to defend and protect families because, you know, I feel that the law that it passed, you know, for same-sex marriage, it was due to that a lot of people weren't aware that, you know, we need to work harder, that, you know, we needed to get more involved. All of the sudden, you know, they just like approve it, like, what happened? And it was, so little by little, because like the one of the talks talk about how the adversary has been like attacking families, throughout abortion, throughout divorce at no fault, throughout promiscuity, all those things that
Mhm.
little by little were like coming to our society like as normal, normalizing that it came to the point that they make the same-sex marriage legal, like put it into our legal system, involving the
Yeah.
government to protect that kind of lifestyle or that kind of choices. Are like, wow. So it
Yeah.
made me really be more aware of those things that I wasn't before, and it just like learn. I just learned how I need to be more involved, like do my part, and I feel very motivated to do something. And we need to start just somewhere, uh,
Yeah.
we won't like all from night to tonight, start like having a bill if we don't have the knowledge. So it has to start like step by step until
Mhm.
we're in that point that we can be do greater things, but we need to start someplace.
Mhm.
So I feel that that's how it changed. I families is so important for
Yeah.
is the main plan of salvation. It has one of the main roles in the plan of salvation. That is that's how important it is to advocate for them, because if not the plan of salvation, we won't receive those blessings. We won't be able to live with Heavenly Father because there is no family. So
Mhm.
that's that's what I learned from.
I liked all those thoughts. Thank you.
So the last one is picture
Woo!
your spouse and children's current or future, and write down some thoughts about how they will benefit from you taking this class. So now I feel that, after taking this class, I have a better understanding of my responsibility to
Mhm.
advocate, to defend, and protect families, to provide a better future for my children. Because, um, like one of the tag was saying, that these changes that they make to marriage, we won't see it right away, all the consequences or the negative consequences, but it's going to take a generation, and that next generation is going to be my kids. They're going to be
Yeah.
suffering for the consequences of what's happening now. So therefore, if I want a better future for them, then I need to apply all this knowledge that I gain in this class to for them to enjoy a brighter future and not a darker future. So there is like that's one of the things that like I gained from this class, that now I am more aware, and now I have the tools to I didn't know how to be an advocate, and this class provide me
Mhm.
that knowledge, to learn how to become a good advocate, not just like an advocate, but become a good one, and I feel that also give me more tools about how I can be better prepared to raise responsible citizens, so they can also make a difference in the world. um, I love that those talks about like raising responsible citizens, because sometimes we just think about like, oh, as long as they live the gospel, but we have to combine those gospel, because our house can be like a bubble for them, like a protection from the world, but it's hard when they get out of that and they find that the world is not that bubble that they live on. So we have to prepare them to be responsible citizens, to know that there is bad in the world, but to know how to deal with those things, and to know that they can make a change, that they can need to do their part too. So I feel that me learning all these things in the class is how they can benefit. My husband can also like do, now that I have this knowledge, I can share it with him, so he can feel the same motivation that I feel now to be an advocate for families and children. And
Right.
once we're in the same page, we as a family can all do it together.
Mhm.
And that's how this class has benefit or can benefit my family, uh, to work on children and family advocacy, and just provide them a better future for their lives.
Mm-hmm. So I really liked all of those thoughts. Also, for me, so this class will benefit. I thought it would benefit my future family by the fact that of knowing that by me protecting my family, it will also be protecting other families. And I like to think of it kind of like a domino effect that takes place when you advocate for your own family. And also because of this class, I am now more involved and aware of the things that are going on in the world. And, personally, I don't like to think about all the bad stuff going on in the world. But now having an understanding of this stuff without it being so negative, seeing the positives and what we can do, I thought that was helpful. And then also, so to wrap things up for me. So from this class, I was reminded that although with all these negative things in the world, and the pushing and the pulling and the tugging of families apart, everything is happening according to plan. And I think that's something that we need to remember. This has been prophesied and proclaimed that these things are going to happen, and the wars and all these issues that are going on, that would happen. And as we advocate for families, I think it's important for us to know that we are on the winning side. So that's just like an ending thought that I wanted to share.
Thank you. I agree with you. I think for that last thought, as it's like we have hope. The gospel brings us hope, and we're blessed to have a prophet and apostles to guide us and give us the strength that we need to keep on, knowing that God still communicate with them and care for our time, and is giving us all the things that we need to be prepared to fight against the things that are going on, and protect what is the most precious, our families.
Right. Well, Julia,
I think we're done with that.
I think this was a good meeting.
Yeah. I feel that we learn things that are important and that we can take in our lives and apply them.
Right.
Thank you for your thoughts and insights.
You too. Thank you so much.
Good luck in the future, and hope that we can keep working on advocating for families.
You too, Julia. Thank you so much. You have a good day, okay?
You too. Bye.
Okay, see you.